go back to the PowerPoint presentation, I wanted to show you what a typical script looks like. So this is a script, and I want to show you, see how I've kind of inserted an image in here. I say use this image or similar, and then I'm talking about you can learn far more, and then look at this in red. In red, in quotation marks, means that it should fly up on the screen, far more. And having the words fly up separately on the screen emphasizes those words. So it means that we always want to have something going on the screen, but we don't want it to be, this is the hard part about video editing. You have to, why am I constantly losing this? You have to be always surprising people with what you're doing. So you can't use the same video tricks over and over again, because then it's not a surprise anymore. So that's why video editing, good video editing, can be very important. So you can see how I have the text of the scripts. Now here's something very important you may want to write down. Always have 2 scripts. One script is for the video editors to work with. That has this kind of information on it. So it'll say things like, insert this video, insert these words. Everything I put in red in my scripts is like a note to the video editors of things to do. So you can see I usually develop a script for an entire MOOC, and I have it all together. So you can see my notes here to the video editors have a little clip of a race car brain person and a hiker brain person. That's what they should have. Now here's something this is one of those things where the person at the podium can do it so quickly that you say, what did she just do? So if you're interested in this, watch very carefully. We're going to go to, I think it's View. Is it View? Yes. So see the tab up at the top? This is Word. It's very similar in other kinds of programs. So you go to View. Then over here is something called Outline. So can you see Outline up there? I'm going to press on Outline. Then see where it says all levels? I'm going to take it to level 2. Suddenly you can see the title here's every week, and there's every script of every video. So you can see it all here. Why did I suddenly? See, this has accidentally been made into something that's too high a level. We'll make that disappear. Now you see week 1, week 2, here's all the videos. The nice thing about writing your videos this way is or your scripts, you can instantly toggle back and forth between seeing the whole overview of your MOOC and going into a particular video. Now watch what I'm going to do. I need 2 hands for this. I'm going to switch 2 videos around so they're in different order. Notice how I just moved it? So it's now a 2-1, 2-5. Sometimes you'll want to switch the order of your videos. It's so easy when you're in this kind of view perspective. It makes everything nice. So I can go to this script. Now if I want to go back to, I can close the outline view, and boom, I'm right back to the regular view. So I can see everything at once, or I can go within a specific script if I want to see what's going on there. I usually like to put everything in as much as possible with the imagery, and I'll give you some more tips on how to insert or come up with good imagery. The thing is, you always need 2 scripts. One is for the editors to work with. The second one, you'll take most of this red stuff out. That's the instructions for the video editors, and you will create a shooting script. And that just has a few little messages for you. So you can see right up here, I say point to one side. So I don't care what side I point to, but sometimes I'll be like point left or point right or duck. And so I put those little instructions for me that I need in my shooting script. So just delete all the other stuff, make a very simple script, and that's the one you'll put on the teleprompter. So, so now let's go back to, hang on a sec. Okay, so what you'll do is, a good thing to do is write that first draft of a script, visualize it. In other words, add in all the images you can, annotations for the people who will be doing the imagery. And then remember, you want something happening every 6 seconds or so. Sometimes this is stuff that the video editor can come up with. They can have a motion. See, a nice thing that you can do, and you would notice this in some of those earlier videos. Notice I'll be on one side of the screen for 30 seconds, 50 seconds, then suddenly I'm on the other side of the screen. And this breaks up the monotony. Watch video editors. They will tend to, just because of the natural nature of things, they'll put you on one side and they'll just keep you there. And it's very boring for the learner. So you want to have, you're on one side, then you're on another, and it's never quite predictable. And when you appear on the other side, it shouldn't just be, I'm here, then suddenly I'm here. You can break it up a little bit. You can be, I'm here, then suddenly I slide out here and slide in from the other side here. There's ways to do really kind of creative entrances. Too much of it, and you can kind of lose it a little bit, but some attention to nuance. There's also what you saw in Nelson Dulles' video. Notice he was sitting there, suddenly crop closer, right? So it has that idea of you're looming closer, and it attracts your attention. So it's top down, or I mean bottom up control of attention. You have to watch because, well, Nelson's not going to kill you, but it's going to activate those same circuits that are, oh, I better keep an eye on this, right? So what you want to do is, as I mentioned earlier, now watch how this happens. I say add occasional, emphasizing words. So you can have things pop up from a certain direction where you have emphasizing words. So if a couple of words are really important, have the words come up on the page. Avoid stuff that just takes time. Sometimes one of the worst things is that a provider will say something like, we need 40 hours of video on how to do an industrial process. Wow. Because you could probably create something even more compelling if it was 13 hours of video, or even shorter. So if you have, the nice thing about MOOCs is you control the length mostly. So the shorter you can get it, the better. And if you have stuff that, well, let's see, I'll insert an interview, some interviews with people. Interviews, students know that they're a way of filling a bunch of time with getting very little value from what people are saying. If you're teaching something, you can concretely say it very, very effectively, very quickly, and get that point across. Interviews, you have to listen for 45 minutes while they're kind of talking around the points. So try not to use interviews as ways of teaching because they're big time wasters. One thing you can do, though, is add interviews in as bonus materials. So they don't have to take it, but they can watch it if they want to. And that way you're putting any ancillary materials in a way that doesn't waste student time if they're really trying to move quickly through the material. You want to make every second count. Steve Jobs, in the old days when computers were first coming up, they used to have, it would take a couple minutes for a computer to boot up. And Steve Jobs said, you will not do that. Think of all the millions of seconds being wasted while people are trying to boot up their computers. And so engineers were like, well, we just can't do this. And he said, yes, you will. And he used his reality distortion field and convinced the engineers to do it. And that's part of why Apple products are so incredibly popular today. When you are teaching, you want to be making every single second count. So even when you are pausing for effect, it should be deliberate on your part. It doesn't mean you have to talk as fast as you can, blah, blah, blah. It just means that everything you do should be for a reason. You might think, well, if you say that's okay, because you're pausing and the students can reflect on things. So saying is okay. It's not, and here's why. When you say it's because you're thinking of something complicated you're about to say. The student doesn't know it yet. So they're just kind of waiting while you're, then you think of it, or you say it, that's when they need the pause. After you said that complex thing, but you've already got it out of the way, so you're moving right on. So just being aware of the value of silence when you need to, after you've said something that's kind of difficult. Another thing is, when you've done something really hard, like a derivation or something that you know students find difficult, put something fun in there. It's like you've just climbed part of a mountain, and they want a little bit of a resting place. So if you put something funny in, it gives them a little bit, it like uses different parts of your brain and gives you a little bit of a time to relax that part of the brain before you climb further. Another thing that humor does that is extremely important is humor establishes trust between you and the learner. So if humor is not easy. But the nice thing about MOOCs is you've got time. Like, I remember Terry and I got this one email from a 12-year-old girl. She says, I never knew professors could be so witty. And the thing is, I'm not witty. I'm just not. My husband will tell you I'm really pretty boring and mundane most of the time. But you can look witty on a MOOC because you've got time to script it and think ahead. And so if you don't have a sense of humor, that's fine. Go ask your spouse, some of your students, hey, I need something funny in here. Do you have some ideas? You'll be surprised at what comes out. And this, writing a MOOC or creating a MOOC has a lot in common with creating a good book. You're putting something of real value out there. It's not, we have this tendency of, class is class. You go to class, you do your best, you kind of wing it because you got a lot of other things to do. But you don't wing it so much with a MOOC because it's going out there. It's going to be there. People are going to watch it and use it over and over again. And so you want to have something in there. It's worth putting some extra time into it. Now, there's sometimes what people will do is they will say, let's see, can I get this working? Come on, there we go. They will say, I'm a professor. I'm going to make this interesting, right? No, do not do that. Interesting is the kiss of death. If it's a professor who thinks it's interesting, it's usually some theoretical, aside that really is, it's just a time filler. What people are looking for is what is directly appropriate. And you can have something a little funny, but be wary, because usually when people are thinking, oh, this is an interesting aside, it's often a time filler that you're coming up with. It's not really relevant to to the direct material. You want it as much as possible to be practical. And if you're teaching a course that might be thought of as not directly practical, let's say one of my beloved subjects, which is history. Well, history, it's okay to have interesting asides, because actually they are really kind of interesting. but even with history, the more you can also bring practically useful ideas that people can bring in to use in their everyday lives, it makes MOOCs and academia itself much more relevant for students. And we as academics often have just never had to worry about relevance. But with this new competitive nature, I think it's valuable to remember that people are weighing the worth of your course against the worth of other courses and other kinds of materials. You want to avoid academies. So for me, for most of you who are professors here, you're probably like me. Anything you write, it automatically comes out in the worst academic prose you could imagine. It's totally boring. It's very stilted. You use these big words. That's okay if it comes out that way. Just get it out on the paper in a very bad draft and then edit it. Go back over and translate it into normal speaking sorts of things. What I often do, especially if I have something that's difficult, I'll read it aloud to my husband. So my husband's not an academic, and he will be first one to tell me in a very nice way, you know, you sound like you're on the moon. This is really not understandable by a normal human being. And that helps me to reword and get things in a little bit better perspective. So as I mentioned before, be sure to build interaction with the medium. So you want to point, duck, move, grab. The more you can make it look like it's a three-dimensional medium instead of you flatly looking at the camera, the more enjoyable it is for the viewer. So how do you handle when you goof up, when you make a mistake? Now, I should mention that everything that you are learning today is because I'm sharing this information that I learned because I made the mistakes about. So like when I'm talking about the microphone and how you set it up with the lever, that's because I messed up with the microphone. Everything is some kind of mess up. So I am the master of making mistakes in MOOC making. And one of the big things I do is if I'm reading a script, I will be reading along, I'm doing just fine, and I'll mess up. Yeah, I'll just read a word wrong or say it wrong. What do you do though? At first, I used to drive my husband insane and go back to the beginning of the script, which was sometimes rather long. So in order to prevent any sort of, keep him from killing me, basically, because I didn't need to do that. I eventually figured out, with his prodding, that all I needed to do was go back to the beginning of a paragraph. If you're doing this kind of thing where you're on this side of the screen, then after a while you move to this side of the screen, and then maybe to the middle of the screen, and then maybe full body, maybe half body, they're kind of used to the idea that you're going to be snipped quite a bit. You're not just, it's not one seamless take. And so what this means is, if you make a mistake, just go back to the beginning of the paragraph and start again, or a sentence back. And it doesn't matter, because it can be easily cut out in one of the, during the editing process. It can disappear. Now, if the flub or the mistake, let's say that my hands are like this, and I'm talking about, I just did a little mistake, but my hands are pretty much in the same place, then there's a technique in Adobe Premiere Pro that your video editor should know, where they can snip this little section out and do what's called a morph transition. It will analyze where you were on the screen, where you are after the cut, and it will build in a little transition between those. So it actually looks like you're still speaking, you made the mistake, but we snipped it out, and you look the same. If your hands are different, if you're here and you were here before, you can't really use a morph cut. But if your hands are close, you can, it's very hard to detect a morph cut edit. So those are excellent. That's a great way to handle a transition. And of course, if you just cut between the paragraphs, that's an easy way. And so what this means is you can be filmed, but it's not like if you make a mistake, oh my gosh, it's a major mistake. It's easy to fix it. You just go back a little bit and start again. Sometimes I will make a mistake, make a mistake, make a mistake, and then the fourth time I finally get it right. That's perfectly normal. People often do these kinds of things. Often what I like to do, unless I'm, my husband I drive him a little crazy because I'm a little bit over-particular about things that I don't need to be over-particular about, is we will film each one twice. So each script I'll read through 2 times. And sometimes I'll just read it in a more lively way. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll film one at 2 with half body, one with full body. And the reason for that is with 4K camera, if you film full body and you go to half body, or maybe closer than half body, it's pretty good, but there's a little pixelation. So if we film one half, one full, it's really quite good. We've got 2 good options. What we would do is take the first film, cut out the flubs, take the second film, cut out the flubs, and then when you lay them on top of one another with the 2 tracks, they're within 5 seconds of one another. And you can easily pop back and forth between let's say you were more expressive with one take than another take, you can go back and forth. If time is a big consideration, you can do just one take of the camera and that will work okay. For me, what I would often do, I find it dissatisfying to look at a MOOC and you can see as they're filming, so going through the week, so it's a whole week's worth of material, but that person, you can see they start out, they look really fresh and everything, and then a little sweat starts coming in, there's sweat over here, and the day is going by, and then they're starting to look more and more tired, and they're always dressed in the same clothes. So what I would often do is you saw the whole script, so I might script the second video of week 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then maybe a couple other random videos, all in one outfit. So nobody can tell. That shows up randomly through the MOOC. And there's a randomness to it. So when I'm appearing from one video to the next, I have different outfit, my hair's slightly different, and I think it's a little more refreshing than, oh, this professor was under the gun and they were filming for hours during the day. So that's just an idea for you. Now, if you're a nervous speaker, it very much helps to just fake it until you make it. You can feel absolutely terrified inside, and if you just keep working at it, you can hide it completely. I read this one description of great leadership, and it said, great leadership is the ability to hide sheer terror. And I think that's sometimes what's happening with MOOCs. You could be absolutely terrified on the inside, but you'll be surprised. People cannot really tell. Now, you may say, but my voice gets all quivery. What do I do about that? There's a trick for you. Now, from an evolutionary perspective, there's 3 different ways that we react when we're frightened. fight, flight, or freeze. Freeze means you are absolutely still. Have you ever had a friend who says, "Oh, look at that bird," and you look and you cannot see the bird until the bird moves? And so it's actually motion attracts attention. So when you freeze, when you think you're in front of an audience, the way you do that is you kind of stop breathing. You breathe only from up here in a very shallow way. And that shallow breath, so you're not breathing normally where you're kind of moving a little bit and kind of breathing a little bit more deeply. You're breathing only from up here. It makes you more invisible because you're free, you're very still, but you don't get enough oxygen. So you start kind of panicking, you know, and your voice gets a little squeaky because you're really nervous. And it doesn't have to do with the fact that you're really nervous so much as the fact that you're not getting enough oxygen. And so, of course, you're very nervous. So the way to combat this is before you start filming, you may say, "Oh my goodness, 30 seconds. I get in front of the camera," and you feel your heart pounding, you're kind of sweating, you're a little nervous. Start breathing from here, down in your belly. And what that does is that that pulls out and it draws air down into your chest and makes it so that you get enough breath and you're able to get up and your voice isn't so shaky. So you may want to practice this a little at home, this deep breathing, if you have trouble with a shaky voice. But this will help. You'll be surprised. That will help a lot with this kind of thing. Remember that how you're feeling inside is not what people are seeing. Like on Learning How to Learn, people will often tell me, they're like, "You just are so, happy and casual, and you just are so cheerful and upbeat." And if you knew, about half of those videos, maybe a little less, I had the worst migraine in the world. It was just like, I rarely get migraines, but it was terrible. So I felt horrible. And afterwards I'd go, "Sit." But you would never know it from looking at it. So whatever your internal feelings are, don't let them fool you. Remember that you can hide it completely. So if you're nervous or anxious or in pain, viewers just don't know. That is, unless you allude to it and say, "Oh, I'm really nervous." Then they'll say, "Oh, well, you must be really nervous." Try not to frown. Sometimes when you're trying to really make a point, an important point, see how my brows are going down? You think you're making the point, and you are, and that's the way you would make it in class, but on video it comes across as, "I hate you," right? So you'll see sometimes on my later videos, you'll see me kind of go like, and then I'll suddenly lift my brows because I know that I'm starting to get that scowl look. So the more you can just have a kind of a friendly, so be aware, try not to look too intent when you're trying to help people learn something. Now for women, there's a few extra factors. So one thing that can happen with women is if you get nervous, the pitch of your voice can go higher. And it can get so high, it's almost squeaky. So if you look at some of the great female leaders and newscasters and so forth, they often took speaking and voice coach lessons to lower the pitch of their voice so that when they got nervous, it still came across as something that was very ordinary instead of something like this from Alvin Chipmunks. So try to watch the pitch of your voice. If it gets high, again, that breathing can very much help, but you don't want to let it, because it can get annoying if it's way too high. And it also can become almost childlike, and then that doesn't give you as much credibility. Another thing you can do is you can stand like, so here's the camera straight ahead. Now I could stand like this if the camera's straight ahead, but if I do that, my hips look square. If I go a little bit like this at an angle to the camera, I look a little bit more slender, right? So if you're a woman, you want to look a little more slender, a little bit of a diagonal can sometimes help. And if you're a guy and you want to look a little more slender, you can do the same trick. Don't wear pearls or things that click against the microphone. So you'll notice in some of the very first videos of learning how to learn, I was like, oh, I'm going to look so elegant. I'm going to wear these pearls, and they would click. And so then I had to try and edit out the click and things like that. So just try to be aware. You don't want anything shiny. Probably guys don't have to worry about this, but for women, I have a kind of a skin tone that is like mayonnaise, basically. And so one time I thought, well, great, I'll wear a white bra. White bra is actually a different color than a mayonnaise skin. And so you could see it right through the shirt. So then we had to refilm everything. So whatever your skin color, try to really truly match that skin color. It will just make things so you don't have to refilm. Now, more generally, don't wear stripes. If you're wearing green and you're filming with a green screen, then that portion of you will suddenly become invisible and you'll look a little funny on the screen, so try to avoid that. So another idea is show research. So here, hopefully we have sound. Even if we don't, it's not a big deal, but, oh, and we don't have sound. So, Paulo, okay. So it actually doesn't matter. I'm just going to show you, see how I'm moving to the side? I actually wouldn't have cut it that way. See? Oh, here it's... Huh. So I'm talking about mushrooms, and don't ingest mushrooms. You know, I mean, that you can use them to go between the different modes of thinking, but I wasn't suggesting that you actually do that. And I cited the research there. So it can be a good idea to somehow cite what you're talking about. The advantage you have as a university in what you're doing is that you're a university. You've got research behind you. And that's how you're better than some providers, because you really know what you're talking about. Show that off. And you can do it kind of in a funny way, just as I did right there. Okay. And also, I always have credits at the end. So you can see here the credits of the editor and so forth. And notice how at the very bottom, I have the references. So anyone can go and look at the references that are relevant to the material I'm describing in that particular video. So for videotaping, when you're actually videotaping, you may wonder what speed to talk at. And Coursera recommends around 200 words a minute. So, and I was really surprised. They said I came in at 200 words a minute. Normally, I am not a fast speaker. In real life, I'm more of a, well, duh, really? I'm really slow in how I think about things. This is why I like to script, because I can be really, I read as swiftly as I can out loud, and it turns out that that's a very good speed. When I first, so time yourself. See how fast you, I don't know if it's faster or slower in Portuguese, if you're doing things in Portuguese, but it's probably kind of on that order. If you're speaking too slowly, then people have trouble with it because it just gets boring. And again, having the teleprompter keeps everything right on speed. Enunciate even more clearly than you would in real life. So you might say, but I would slur things a little bit in real life. But it's not real life on a MOOC. You want to be very careful to enunciate clearly. So you'll have people from the other parts of the country trying to understand you, and if you slur or something like that, it just makes it very difficult for them to understand. Another idea for you when you're making MOOCs is to start filming in the middle of the MOOC. There is something about that very first video where you're going, oh my word, this is the very first video. Thousands of people could watch this. And you get really nervous and your voice goes up like this and it's all squeaky and stuff. So if you just say, if you film something from the middle, then you film that, then you can go back and start filming more towards the beginning, and it will go more smoothly. And maybe by the time you get to that middle one, you might want to refilm it, who knows. But this is a good tip to make sure that your first videos are more welcoming. So don't be afraid to look stupid. Sometimes what I've done is I put outtakes at the back of my videos of really stupid mistakes that I make. And students, they very much enjoy that kind of thing. So, and again, another reminder is everyone is hypercritical of themselves. So it's okay. You just kind of get past it. You've got too much to do to worry about micro things. Now, having good visuals is a very important part of MOOC making. So in Learning How to Learn, I had a talented person who did some of the visuals for my book. His name was Kevin Mendez. And so I just reused a lot of those same visuals and added a few more. And this was actually, I got a very good deal because Kevin is our son-in-law. And so that's our daughter right there. But I think the more you can know the artists you're working with, the better it can be for you. They're just very creative and they add so much. So cost is a factor, a very important factor. Sometimes the larger universities have access to art repositories like Getty Images, and so your tendency will be to write the script and say, okay, you guys, you need to get the pictures, go to Getty. Don't do that, because for one thing, they're expensive. And particularly, let's say that you have a 5-second clip of a hospital scene. That can cost $500. That kind of thing can really add up fast. So there's other ways to get this kind of material, and I'll talk about some of them. So this is just an example where I've put it into my script, and this is something from that I took from Getty Images, and I showed them what I wanted there. But there's other ways to do this, and mostly Wikipedia is a great source. So you want to indicate where it's from on Wikipedia. So here's how you find out. If you go to Wikipedia, there's almost always something that says it's licensed, what its license is. If it says it's Creative Commons, then that's usually something you can use, and if you click on that, it will give you the exact terms, and it will often even show you how to cite that material. So it's great, it's easy to get to, and it works really well. If you go to Wikipedia and it says something like the work is in public domain, then that means you're in pretty good shape through most of the world. There are some slight differences. Usually on Wikipedia they will tell you, in some countries it's 100 years after the death of the person, others it's 90 and so forth. But they'll often give you exactly what you need to do to cite within your country. One problem though is that if you look, here's a picture of Daniel Kahneman. It says public domain. You're like, great, I can use this picture of Daniel Kahneman, except the size is 150 by 179 pixels. That's so small that if you try to blow it up and use it on the MOOC, it's not going to work very well. So watch the size, because even if you can use it, if it's freely available, it may be at such a low pixel density that it's not worthwhile for you. Now, another thing is if you run into something that says, oh, this is on Wikipedia, and it's licensed under fair use. Fair use sounds like you can use it fairly, right? No. Fair use means Wikipedia can use it, but you cannot. Wikipedia is, they're a not-for-profit. So they have a low pixel density version of that image they put on. And if you're using it at a university and it's only within the university, then Paulo can probably tell you whether or not it's okay to use. But if you're putting it on Coursera, don't do that, because that is not necessarily not-for-profit. So you want to be very careful. If it says fair use, stay away from it. Wherever you can, try to get moving images. So there is something called video blocks that's $149 per year. And video blocks is pretty good if you have a subscription for that. You can get a lot of great video footage, but it's not going to cover everything. So there are tremendous videos available, usually, again, on Wikimedia. So here is just a little video of a grebe. I use this as a metaphor to illustrate an idea, but you can see if you're in biology, there's all sorts of moving images that you can often find on Wikimedia. You can also find things like, here's this is on Wikimedia, it's a combustion engine. This is, up on the right is the Mongolian Empire and its expansion. Here you can have a beating heart. All of these kinds of things are available, and you can use them as motion. So when I'm standing up there and I'm talking about the amygdala, I could be having a picture of the amygdala. Okay, there's a picture of the amygdala. Instead, on the lower right there, you can see there's the amygdala. You can see it where it is in the brain. And I can say, now you can see in this rotating, the red is the, oh, no, that's the hippocampus. So I can be talking about different kinds of things and having them move in front of you. And movement is what helps grab and keep people's attention. So the more you can find, and you can find these things are free. And usually, you think, you will know your discipline better than most anybody else. And you'll think, I know there's this gif of a heart out there. Yeah, they can find it. They cannot find it. It is really difficult for an editor to go and look and find the stuff that you know exists. You need to kind of lend a little bit of a hand on these kinds of images. It will make your MOOC a lot better, and a lot better than you just saying, okay, you guys, go off to Getty Images now and grab these things. There's something personal about these kinds of, especially moving imagery, that people resonate with. And again, it gets you away from that $2 million for MOOCs that nobody watches. So another thing to do is to start thinking about taking videos and pictures of yourself, your families, your friends, your students, but you may need to get permission from your students. If you have these little videos, they can save a lot of money and turn out to be something that's even more appropriate for what you're doing on your MOOC than what you could purchase online. See, look, I'm sleeping, right? So I'm going to sleep. Well, okay, we got that. This up here is, that's my son-in-law in Chile playing soccer. I would have had to pay $500 to do that. Instead, he's like, we'll get you some footage while I'm playing with my friends. So these just kind of be thinking, oh, hey, we're traveling, we're doing something kind of fun, or we're doing something a little different. Oh, take some of that film, especially if it's in any way relevant to what you think you might be teaching. Now, animations are always possible, but you have to be very careful what you wish for as far as animations. These are some animations from a recent MOOC that I did. They're great, and they're very expensive. So if you're thinking, oh yeah, the animators, yeah, they'll do it for us. Well, they can, but it takes a lot of money. It's probably about $200 for each of these animations. That's in the US, of course, it's different from here, but still, it's going to cost you to do animations. Music is a very important part of MOOC making, so there are free sources. So, for example, my latest MOOC, what was the free source I used? My brother! My brother likes to write music. So I use the music, and people tell me, they're like, where'd you get that music? Who wrote that? And I'm like, that's my brother. And my brother's so happy. And there's lots of, there's student bands. As long as you're getting it appropriately through, approved by university channels, there's probably many ways that you can find music locally that's really first rate. So, one thing I wanted to point out, if you see something online that says it's a royalty source of music or video, that means that you have to pay. Because royalty-free means you pay only one time, not on a royalty continuing basis. So actually, royalty-free is okay if you're willing to pay, but that's what it means. One source I use for music is something called Pond 5. Pond 5 you can get, let's say that I need Russian balalaika music, and I need about 30 seconds of it. Well, I can go find Russian balalaika music and pay $20 or something along those lines for it. And so they have that kind of thing. Whatever kind of obscure music you need, they probably got it for you. There are also other videos or music sources that are monthly subscription, and you can subscribe and then get their songs royalty free. A really good one is Epidemic Sound. And another good one is MusicBed. So we'll switch gears just a little bit. I want to give you just a couple insights on running a course. So we're changing from the editing and creation mode to running things. Mentors, there's two ways on Coursera to run mentors. One is that you run the team, and the other is that Coursera just takes over the mentors for your course, and they run it. I'll be honest with you, it is, from a student perspective, it is much better if the instructor retains an interest in the course and runs the mentors. And that's an easy way to do, or easy thing to do if you appoint what I call a lead. So my background is from the military. As a military officer, I'm very used to the chain of command. So for running a MOOC, when you have a mentor, pick one of your best mentors to act as the lead. They can interact with anyone else who's a mentor in the course, and you only really need to interact with the lead, and it can help reduce the time. You also have a friend who can help you to make sure that the course is running really well. So I myself am the instructor. I will have a lead, and the lead interacts with many other mentors. So a good way to do this is just take a quick look over the discussion forums, and usually you can find people who are active, who are nice, and they can help you. A good idea is, if it's possible, is to bring your lead to a Coursera conference if you have the monies available to do that. It's a good encouragement, and it also gives you a chance to meet face-to-face with your lead. So mentors, they're kind of like park rangers. They roam around. They do things like find out that somebody's uploaded porn, in a project video, or just weird things that happen online. And they're your first chain of command, because if you put out the fires very early, your course runs really smoothly. But if you don't have anyone checking these things, a course can get into trouble just through a few trolls and kind of flamethrowers and so forth, and you don't want that to happen. So also there's flags on Coursera, so you notice that there's where that arrow is pointing, there's the flags. Flags means something that the students have flagged as an issue. So generally my mentors go and take care of flags that are raised by students. That just makes everything very easy for me. So in our course, we put our lead mentor. So Learning How to Learn, for example, in Spanish, has the Spanish lead, and he is listed with the instructors. And so we have, similarly, our oldest non-English course is in Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. So Manuel Atier is our Portuguese lead, and that course has, I believe, around 100,000 students in it now, and it's always growing. So you can use quizzes for onboarding. So we began to notice that students were always asking the same questions. So and they were all covered in the description at the beginning of the course, in the syllabus. So we created a little onboarding quiz that is only 5% of the grade of the course. And it's a very quick little quiz. Like, people would always ask, where is the closed caption symbol? Do you have closed captions? Well, we did, but nobody would ever look. So we created a question. Do you know where the closed caption symbol is? Check this box if you know. And then we have a picture so people can clearly see it. By going through these very commonly asked questions and just putting putting them with the quiz, people stopped. They get their questions answered, and they can go much more efficiently through the course. Notice, too, that there's a picture in the quiz. So sometimes people forget that you can add pictures, and it just makes things a little more fun. A lot of times what I try to do is I add a little humor. So if it's 5 multiple choice questions, maybe I'll have a 6th option that's strange or wacky or has a funny picture. And it just adds a little humor, so they never know where they're going to get a little humor in the course. So, for example, here I ask, if you have a poor working memory, you are more likely to be more, and the answer is creative, right? But creepy, and then I have a creepy picture, and then it says, come on, we never said that. Sleepy, this certainly wasn't anything. So yeah, I add a little bit of humor and try to make things different. When they have a wrong answer, I try to not put the same, sorry, you got this wrong, that kind of thing. I switch things up so there's a little difference in what they're seeing. So the quizzes, I think, are one of the most important parts of the course. So I put a lot of time into creating very good quizzes. Sometimes I think what people will do is they'll just give off to a grad student all the quizzes for the course, the creation of the quizzes. And sometimes the questions are just not that good, because how is it easy to create questions in an online quiz? Ask something numerical, right? I said there's 100 billion neurons in the brain, so how many neurons are in the brain? But is that really critical for what you need to know in the course? Was it this numerical thing, or was it something deeper than that? A lot of times these quick answered things, the easy questions to develop, they're not the ones that really test whether the students are learning what you want them to be learning. So sometimes I'll do before and after polls. So on the video, for example, where I ask, do you prefer to listen to music when you're studying? Never, sometimes always. I do that before at the beginning of the video, and then at the end of the video, I do something a little similar. And it's just interesting to see what the differences are in some questions, in how they answer some questions. So again, occasional gifts, you can add them even into quizzes. So I think another thing that is often overlooked in great MOOC making is the ability you have to create a wonderful community. So for me, every Friday, I send out a cheery Friday greeting, and it goes out to 1.2 million people. So when I'm sending out the email Friday morning, I'm like, you know how it is sometimes? You're like, should I press the button? And I'm like, should I press the button? Did I really check it? But it's a very large, very vibrant community. And part of the reason for that, I think, is the consistency. People know that every Friday I'm going to be sending this email out, and I'm actually looking during the week to collect things. I just learned of a Portuguese, of a video or of a MOOC that will help English speakers learn Portuguese enough to get by when you come down here. I'm like, man, I'm going to put that in my Cheery Friday email, so people will learn about this great MOOC that I could have used before I came down here. So I would just, in closing this portion of the discussion, I would just like to say that MOOCs are a little bit like dating, right? What happens when you date? When you date, you kind of want to make sure that you're looking your best, you're feeling your best. If you have a cold, you might cancel the date. You're always like looking your very best. So it's kind of like that when you're making MOOC videos, right? You are putting forth your best effort. It's everything you have to make a really great presentation. Now, classes themselves are more like marriage. You wake up in the morning, you're all frumpy, and you say something, you can't take it back. It's whatever you say is what you get. If you have a bad class, you can't just say, sorry, I was off that day. Well, I mean, you have to just say, I wasn't that good that day. You can't get it back. So it's a different world. And we're at the ground floor of a learning revolution. What are you waiting for? It's so exciting. So now what you're waiting for is I'm going to switch modes to and we're going to talk about, so let's take like a 2-minute break while I'm switching my presentations, and then I'm going to talk about how to create something that's more for smaller classes and much easier to do. 2 minutes.
Connected. Let me see if there's a little feedback. Which side? You might want to go so. Make a motion with the pen to see whether it's going right to left. Is it going the right way?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, we're good. Okay. Everybody ready? We are ready. Now, first I want to show you something that is incredibly helpful when you're making small online courses. Now, this is called the Wacom tablet. And this is a huge Wacom tablet. So I asked Paulo for something, and as usual, he gave me something that's more than enough. And it's a very large, but you can see it's just got, the one I use at home is about a third this size, and it's got a USB connector, and it just hooks straight into my computer, so it's very easy to use. Now what I do, so I've just hauled up a blank PowerPoint. You can do this with Word or whatever. Let's see where this turns out. Okay, so I'm writing. So here we go, writing. And let's see, I'm having a little trouble seeing. Let's see if we can go over here. And we've got, where's our writing tool? There we go, format. And, we've got our drawing tools. So you can generally change the color of whatever you're doing. So is this working? I'm having a little trouble with, let's see, let's go over here. And this is clicking and activating. But you can see the basic idea is that you can write whatever you want, and you can take notes right there in front of your students. So you'll see, as I'm showing you, you can, when you have it right in front of you, it's easy to change the color, change the thickness of the stylus, and all of this kind of thing. But the Wacom tablet is a very easy thing to use. There's an iPad equivalent that's coming out that's giving Wacom a run for the money. But if your university, you can get usually a very inexpensive Wacom tablet that you can use in your classes and at home. What I often do when I'm in class is you'll see I have some PowerPoints that have partial notes in them. In class, I fill out the PowerPoint. I write with my hand. I am recording. I have a little recorder. I am too lazy to film a class 2 times. So when I'm teaching a class, I'm also recording the class. I can put that class right online. And it's so easy, right? So I can go all over the world. I can do all sorts of different things traveling because if I'm out of town, my students can look at the video and they know to be able to do that. So it can make things a lot easier for you and for your students. Often the rule of thumb I do is if you're going to get a class recorded, that you want to have all the information recorded and available for students. Not that they're going to only look at videos, but just that all of your lectures are recorded. I do 1 class per semester. That's pretty good. I can go through it. If I want to, I can edit the videos, take out some of the ums and ahs. But just having 1 class per semester that I'm recording and getting all ready for going online is a good way to slowly get your materials available so that they're there for students. Now, does everyone here know what a flipped class is? Anyone want an explanation of a flipped class? Okay, so flipped class, what that means is you put your video lectures online. So the material you would ordinarily tell your students, you record that as a video in the way that I'm going to be showing you, and I'll give you some examples. And then maybe, let's say that your class meets 4 hours a week. 2 hours a week, they can be watching videos. The other 2 hours, so another class session, they come in and you will actively work problems and work with the materials together. So it's a way of flipping means they do the stuff you normally do in front of the students at home. So the way you usually teach in school, they do that at home. And then the homework that they used to do at home, they'll do that together at school. So that's why it's called a flipped class, because it's kind of flipping the usual way of how we think about things. So in this next section, what we're going to talk about is just how you make simple online materials and how you can use insights from online classes to improve your face-to-face as well as online teaching. So at the end of this section, when I'm presenting here, what we're going to do is a little tutorial. We're going to walk you through just a little bit about how to use Camtasia. But if you already have another kind of screencasting software that you use, that's fine. You'll still get some ideas here from what we're doing before we do the Camtasia workshop. So Camtasia, just to give you a little bit of an insight before we dive into it, how many here have actually used Camtasia before this? So some of you. How many are interested in using Camtasia but you just haven't done it before? So a fair number, okay. So Camtasia it's a very nice software, and I say that even though it is from the state of Michigan, where I am from. So, but what I like about it is it's pretty simple to use. It's pretty intuitive. The first day you use it, it might seem a little bit difficult. But kids use this stuff all the time, and if they can use it, you can learn how to do it. We're telling our students, we want you to learn this new material, and yet sometimes we're shy about learning something, a new technology, even when it's straightforward. So we have to kind of jump past that a little bit. This area of the screen is called the canvas. And this is an older version of Camtasia that I'm showing here, but it's pretty much the same. This is the timeline. And what will happen is you'll get a video that's filmed, and we'll film a little video, and there's the sound of the video, and everything's loaded on the timeline. That's what you'll be editing with. So it's super easy, and we'll use that, but this is the program that is foundational. There are other programs. There's a free version of Camtasia. You can't really do any editing or anything with it. And it's like, editing is where the fun is. So that's why I really like the pay version of Camtasia. There are other equivalents you can find of free software, but usually it's more kludgy, and you have to spend more time learning how to use it, where Camtasia is very intuitive and simple. So that's part of why I recommend that. You can use your computer microphone. You can use a condenser microphone like this one. You can use a headset, whatever you want to record good sound. Now, a problem is that I was using a condenser microphone, and a condenser will catch my voice plus the student voices, which is nice if I want to catch student questions. But I noticed there was this weird thing that happened. So I was teaching this one, I went back home, and it was a really kind of an intense lecture, and I was so, I really got into, I did this fabulous job, recording it and everything, and I was so pleased with myself. And I listened back to it, and you could hear my husband snoring in the background. So what did I do? I took advantage of it. I put a little arrow up at can you hear my husband snoring, right? And so when you get those little funny things that kind of rise, of course that doesn't say much for how exciting my lecture actually was, but so again, here's the Wacom tablet. This is a smaller one, much like the one I have at home. It's just really easy to use, easy to bring to places. Now, I'm going to show you this is a PowerPoint slide. And notice the black on the edges. The black on the edges is because this PowerPoint is, 4:3. It's not in the much better resolution, which is 9 by 16. So it's just because this is a very early video that I did. So just watch what the definitions are on your size of your screen if you want it to fit well. But what I have is a PowerPoint. I have everything up there already, and I'm talking students through it. The key ideas are things that I write out by hand. So you'll see me writing through by hand as I'm explaining certain things.
But there are some special sets, the null set, and we usually denote that with this 0 with a
doesn't matter what I'm
cross
saying.
through it. Well, that was sort of poorly done. Maybe more like this. And it contains no elements at all, not even a 0. And then
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure why the sound is so scratchy, because in real life the sound is actually much better. It's very, you can understand it. But you get the idea here that you're just writing away, and
the random variable x has a binary.
What that can do is just make it so that the students, you can present a lot of material, but they're not having to write everything down. So these partially filled notes they're awesome online. So sometimes I will do things, I hope you can, some of it's visual, so you'll see. What I often like to do is start out with something a little funny. Well, if you're teaching statistical sampling, for example, that seems like, how could you get some humor in there? Well, there's all sorts of ways you can do it, and you'll get a few ideas here.
Here we are back for statistical sampling, part G. This is where we left off last time.
Nope,
remember that
snobby
we
accent.
say the expected. This is actually the cross Excel spreadsheet of the entire universe.
So notice what I was doing there is, this is actually the coolest Excel spreadsheet in the entire universe. So I was just being really excited. So just your voice, if we had a little better acoustics on it, you would hear it. I'm trying to generate drama and excitement about something that people often aren't. Excel spreadsheets are not generally sources of drama. And here I just have a picture of me at 3 years old, looking really smug.
And here we are now to talk about bivariate distributions in the form of continuous distributions. This is so exciting today, you won't be able to stand it.
So this is so exciting today, you won't be able to stand it, right? It's bivariate distributions, it's just so cool, right? So if you share this kind of humor, they so enjoy it. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, this is t-tests. So I'm in China helping to make a teapot for t-tests. So
Now I want to talk about t-tests, but first let's talk about... Here we go, we're back to discrete probability distributions. We're about to go for the last group, and I think we should...
Okay, I don't think you can really understand that, can you? I'm about to tell a terrible pun. Okay, so we'll skip the pun, but puns are great because you can read them, you can just get them together beforehand, and you can say together, or today we've got today's bad pun, and then you can read whatever the bad pun is, and they don't know that you're reading from it. So puns are a great source of humor. One thing I like to do is I like to show students how to adjust play speed settings. So usually at the beginning of a flipped class, while we're actively meeting, I will show them, here's how you adjust the play speed. And you might think, well, I don't want them going quickly through my material. But you actually do. You want them to stop when they get confused. So it's the stopping when they get confused that's the important thing. You don't want them being so bored when they're going along, and one way to do that is to speed up the play speed. So a little tip for you, remember every tip I'm giving is because I made mistakes along the way. I did not keep my files organized to begin with, and when you're creating something, for example, with Camtasia or anything else, once you take that video and you load it online, it's in kind of a crappy version. If you take that version back and you edit that version, it will become a crappier version. And each time you re-edit the video, the new video, it will become worse and worse, so it looks really blurry. You want to instead keep all of your assets for any, so let's say it's the first session of the course, the second session, the third session. Keep them all, each one in a file, so you can go back to the original material and edit with the original material. That way you're not creating poorer and poorer copies to work from. So, what is your learning management system here? Do you use Moodle? Okay. Well, our university uses Moodle. It's pretty similar for whatever LMS you've got. The way I like to structure things is using indents. So I will often have a video, and again, because I don't have time to make a bunch of short clips, I have longer clips. So you can see some of these are like 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and so forth. I will often tell them, watch about 20 minutes at a time. And it works pretty well to do something. I just don't have time. It's not like MOOC making where I got to make time because thousands and thousands of people are going to watch. This is like 30 to 50 students per semester. And so I will have a key video. I have the PowerPoints. Those are those partially filled PowerPoints that are blank. And then maybe I'll have some associated homework problems. And then I'll have an online quiz. Now, I don't know if you're like we are in the United States. I don't know if you have problems with cheating on online quizzes. there's actually a way to handle that. So I'll give you some clues about how to handle some surprising results that you might get on online quizzes. But after the material, I'll have the material, the video, then I'll have an online quiz, and here's a new video online quiz. Sometimes I might have 1 or 2 videos that relate to a concept, and that's okay. So it might be first video here, second video is indented, then the PowerPoint homework and the quiz that relate to that. But by keeping everything well organized, it works beautifully for students. I was so surprised. One semester, I had to be out of town a lot. And I thought, the students are going to hate me, right? Because I'm not here as often. But I had everything very well structured, all online. When we meet, it was all well organized. So the last day of class, they were lined up out the door. They were thanking me because the class was so well organized and so well run, and you can do that when you've got online materials. So then I just kind of thought, maybe the more I'm gone, the happier they are. But the students very much appreciate when you have a very well-structured course. The one thing that I do try to do, I should have mentioned there is one enormous drawback to a MOOC, and that is you can get a lot of fan mail. It can make your life really difficult because you can get a lot of letters from people who really appreciate what you've done, and then you feel like you want to respond in kind, and that can eat your time up tremendously. So I try to watch my correspondence as related to the MOOC, just because MOOCs, they can take over things, so you have to just be judgmental, and then it won't do that. But with my in-person classes, when I have things online, and a lot of the courses online, you email me from my in-person class, you're going to get a response from me very quickly. Students very much appreciate that. So if there's one thing I can recommend to you to make happy students, it's to respond very quickly when they have questions and so forth. But here's a trick I use to help keep in-person class correspondence to a minimum. If you answer every question that a student brings to you or emails you, you will get a lot more questions because they love you. You're holding them by the hand, answering all their questions. So I noticed that in the MOOC, there wasn't so much of a tendency to be reaching out to the professor. They'd reach out to fellow students. So I thought, how can I do that in my in-person classes? Well, here's how I do it. There's, in Moodle, there's something called forced question enrollments. So there's forums where students can post their questions. So what will often happen is the first or the second week of the course, maybe the second week, a student will write to you with a question, and it's a good question. And so your tendency is to answer it. But you don't want to do that. What you want to do is you email that student back and you say, I would like you to post this question on the forum. As soon as they post their question on the forum, I'm having trouble with homework problem number 14, -2. Then they post that, it goes up there, and then nothing happens. Nobody answers this question. So I wait a day, and then after a day, I will answer, or I'll give clues about how you can answer this question. So, but then at the very end of where I've given these clues, I will say this. I'll say, oh, Juan was brave and asked this first question online. So he gets a bonus point. But nobody answered. I was going to give a bonus point to the person who answered as well. And from then on, they will post questions and they will answer questions and do it maybe for the first couple weeks, but then they'll get in the habit and it will work really well. So that's a way of getting away from being the person who's trying to be a good teacher, but you're actually being someone who's almost becoming a servant to the student if you are answering every trivial question that they might have, or even if you're just seen as, I can only go to the professor. You want them to be going to other students to ask their questions. So quizzes are critical, online quizzes, but you want to check by having in-person quizzes as well. So for me, what I'll do is every time I meet in class, I have a quiz, an in-person quiz. So that usually means once a week we meet in person and I have a quiz for my students. Now, if you have 800 students in your class, that's probably not practical. But if you have 30 or 50, a brief quiz that's easily graded is practical. The more you can test your students, the better your students will do. And so I also keep an entire set of PowerPoints for the whole course. That turned out, I don't know if I'll do that again, because it means whenever I make one change in a PowerPoint, I have to change it in two places. I have to change it in the complete set, and I have to change it in the set that's the smaller set for that particular section. I have PDFs as well as PowerPoints just in case they have trouble with one or another. So for quizzes, I try to have a mastery learning approach, so students get several chances, at least with the quizzes that are online. So test what's really important, not what's easily testable, and there's a big difference there. Sorry. So here's your trick. Here's the trick for what you do when you have online courses and in-person, or online quizzes and in-person quizzes. What I do is, well, I've got a better trick than this. So often what I'll do is whatever your in-person quiz score is, if it is lower than your Moodle score, the Moodle quiz score, you get that Moodle quiz is replaced by your in-class quiz. So it's a little bit slightly different than what I've got here. I used to do it this way. So this one I would reduce it somewhat. Now I just replace one by the other. So let's say that you get a 98% on your Moodle quizzes. Sounds great, right? But you could get that by cheating pretty easily. And let's say that you got a 72% in your in-class quizzes as your average. Well, the 72% replaces the 98% in the final calculation of the grade. So I put that in my syllabus. I emphasize it in the course. I even have it in some of the Moodle quizzes. I understand that my grade will, for online quizzes, will be replaced by the in-class quizzes if that grade in class is lower. So this is a way of, a lot of students will try to, I don't know if your Brazilian students are like American students, North American students, but what they'll do in the United States is they will try to just pass a class. That's all I want to do is just pass it. So if they can, let's see, homework. Well, if homework counts for part of it, they can do that with their friends, so they can cheat on that. Then quizzes. If you've got online quizzes, they can cheat on those. If there's a project, they can cheat on that. So all they would have to do is do just enough on the in-class final examination, and they can know virtually nothing in the class and still pass. So by doing this kind of thing where you're replacing a grade, you can, by something that is real in-person testimony, how they did in the in-class quizzes, you can help reduce that chance that you'll get somebody passing the course just doing basically nothing. So Part of what we're trying to do, though, even though I'm talking about quizzes and all of this kind of thing, in our courses, we're trying to, communicate the excitement and the adventure of learning. So we always want to be keeping that in mind as we're going. Now, there is one thing I want to ask Paulo about. What is here in Brazil as far as how you can use, for example, video clips? Can you use, movie clips? Can you use movie clips in a course that's here at the University of Sao Paulo that's not a MOOC, just like a tiny clip from a movie? Okay. So that's very similar to what we have in the United States. You can generally use then, it seems, a small clip if it's just for one of your classes. So I want to give you a few ideas of things you can do in your class and in your online videos to make them a little more fun. So what I'll do is I'll go through some big derivation. We've worked it all out. They've just spent 20 minutes. It is super boring. And then what I'll put on is like a little video, a little snippet that I stole from YouTube, like this one.
Hi, this is Chuck Storm. I'm live at the scene where last night there was a robbery at about 3:30 in the morning. Now, police have...
That is actually, it's not real. It was just, he's an actor, and they just did it for fun. But you can find the funniest stuff. And people will be going along, you've got this really boring stuff, and then you got done, poof, you have this wacky video. People love it. It really makes your students kind of perk up a little bit and enjoy more what you're doing. So I sometimes use snippets from movies. So here's one. Bruce Almighty, Jim Carrey. I've got the power. Yeah. So, of course, this has to do, there's great music in it. Students really love a little bit of music. And, of course, it has something, I'm talking about exponents. So I've got the power, kind of relates right there. Sometimes I'll use cartoons.
Oh, son of a gun. You thought I was going to say son of a bitch, didn't you?
So that was a little bit risque, but I've gotten away with it. So I also sometimes use movie snippets to illustrate. It can, again, engineering, mathematics, and so forth, it can be really boring. So occasional little snippets about the history of your discipline. Isambard Kingdom Brunel was one of the great engineers. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the Great Eastern Railway that he had built. And so I used a snippet from something called the Great Train Robbery that showed what it looked like.
To get a sense of what things must have looked.
I'll just show a little snippet later on here, but it shows what the scenery looked like back at the time in England when he was building the Great Eastern Railway, and it's pretty amazing stuff. I love the music. Look at that. That's what England was like 150, 200 years ago. I love it. Watch this guy. He's going to fly off here after a second. There goes. I just think it's so fun, right? It really gets students kind of involved, and it makes something so you're not talking about circuits or talking about something to do with the transportation system, but it brings it to life. So using little snippets like this can be a great thing. Also, just funny little momentary interlude pictures. So we've just finished a very difficult problem. The squirrel is just relaxing. So I'll put the squirrel up, and just so we can all have a little bit of fun together. So what I want to do now is to go, and we're going to do just a tiny bit with Camtasia together. I'm hoping that you might have had the Camtasia downloaded onto your computer. There's a free trial version. And let's see, so I'm going to go to it. And again, it may seem a little bit difficult, but it's actually not difficult at all. A lot of kids edit with this within a day or two of just messing around for half an hour or so for a day. You'll be surprised. You'll actually already be creating new things. So if you can pull up Camtasia, and I'd like you to click on New Project. Okay, so if you've got it, just click on New Project. And there we go. We've got New Project. And that's the canvas here that you'll see screens. There's the timeline. This is sort of the tool palette right here. And this will give you some additional information about the tools. So if you see up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a button that says Record. So what we're going to do is we're going to press this button, and it's going to record whatever is on your screen, and it's also probably going to record you. So I was just running a trial last night, and I was surprised. I was like, I was looking so haggard last night. It was like, oh, that's right, it's recording me at the same time. So if you're looking a little haggard, you will be caught doing that. So let's press the record. Notice it says initializing. Oh, no, we want to delete that. Okay, so it's initializing things. Now, notice in the lower left-hand side, it will either do a full screen, which is what it's set at as the default. That's this green that's all around the edges. It can record the full screen, or it can record a custom part of the screen if you do that, if you indicate that part. I have the camera turned on. So if you'd like, it makes it a little more fun if you just videotape yourself too. So I would suggest that you have it turned on for yourself. Let's see if I got, okay. And I've got the audio is on as well. So here we go. I'm going to press record, and you can do the same. So just press record. Notice it's 3, 2, 1, and okay, now it's recording. It's recording what's on the screen. So I'm just going to close this and close this so you can see that I'm doing something, but it's also recording me. So let's go back to it now. Okay, now I've just recorded 16, 17 seconds of stuff. I'm going to stop it, so I'll press stop. Now, look at what it's done. It has captured two things. One of them is me, my video, and the other is what's going on screen. There's me right there, and there's my screen. Now, I may just want what's on the screen. In that case, I can right-click here, and I can delete that track if I want to. And then I would disappear right here. But alternatively, let's say I want to make me large. I'll do that. There we go. You see my chin. right? I'm looking. So let's just run it and see what happens.
It's recording what's on this board, so I'm just going to close it.
I sound like I'm speaking Portuguese. So you can see how easy it is. I can capture myself if I want to, or you can see, let's go back here. Okay, now you'll see me. It's recording what's on this board, so I'm just going to close this so you can see that I'm doing something. So whatever I have on the screen is being captured. So if I'm using my Camtasia to have a PowerPoint, I just start that up right on my PowerPoint. It's recording the whole thing. I can record a 50-minute lecture. I can record a 2-hour lecture if I want to, just going along, recording away, and then when you're done. So let's go back to it now. Okay, now I just recorded. When you're done, what you'll do is you'll go to, share, and then for me, I don't want to put it on YouTube or anything, so I'll go to local file, and custom production settings, that's on 1920 by 1080. Let's say I want 720, so I want a little bit smaller resolution. Then I just select that, go to next, and I'll call this B, and we'll save it on desktop. So it's rendering the video now, and you can see it's just created a B folder right there. And there we go. So you've just created, hopefully, a video on your computer. You can see how really simple it is to create this kind of thing. Now, if you want to be a little fancier, one thing that you can do is, let's see if I can get out of here. Okay, so you can go in and let's say right here, maybe I've put an right there. So let's see what I said. I want to get rid of that. Okay, I'll do that. I go to the beginning that I want to be cutting. If I'm on a PC, I can press S. If I'm on a Mac, since I'm not on a Mac, I don't know those codes, so I would just go to this little symbol right here, which means splice or cut or split. So I've just split right there, and then I can go a little bit further. And I'm going to split again. Maybe. Oh, I have to select it in order for it to split. I hit the split again. Now I've got this little bit right here that I want to trim out. I can right-click on it, delete it, and then move the track forward if I want. So it's if you have, let's say you made a mistake. It's very simple for you to go in, just cut that mistake out, and you're done. If you want to, you can add some nice little annotations or transitions. So let's say that I've got that break right there. I can bring a transition down. So all I have to do is click on that transition, and we're going to have a fade. So I'll bring the fade down. I drag it onto the timeline, and then suddenly I have a fade. So if I have two very different clips that I'm running one into another, I can fade them. And it's a little hard to see that fade because it's fading from the one thing exactly to the same thing. So let's try to fade to something that's very different. So I'm going to cut this out here. There we go. We're deleting it. Move it forward. And we should have, let's see if I've got a fade that works properly. Okay, now we should have it working.
Like this. So let's go back to it now.
Oh, that was a little short. So I can draw the fade out.
So I'm just going to like this. So let's go back to it now.
Oh, my fade's not working very well. Let's try fade to black. Oh. See, we've got some really smart people. So you are seeing the fade going on. So thank you for that. And so we're actually only fading me right here. And it is fading, so let's try to make that larger.
So I'm just going to like this. So let's go back to it now.
And so you can even see me making it larger a little bit later. The thing to do with this is play with it. Just play. There's some fantastic tutorial videos that Camtasia puts out. So if you just spend, I think there's about 3 or 4 5-minute introductory tutorial videos. If you just spend a little time with that, you'll start learning about things like how do you put arrows in? How do you put arrows that wiggle? If you want, you can. But all the basic stuff is there and easily doable within 5 minutes. So it's a very, very easy tool to use. You can see it just, one thing if I can recommend is a lot of times when people are using this kind of Camtasia, they'll have it, like some of my videos, I'll have arrow, 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 arrow. I'll always be pointing out something. When I'm on a MOOC, I can literally be, in some sense, standing there and pointing and serving as the arrow myself. But if I can't do that very well when I'm on Camtasia. So if I'm writing something, that's great, but if it's a visual that's all by itself, like an animation that I'm using, I'll often use the arrow feature in Camtasia to be able to illustrate some of the ideas. So you can see, it's a totally easy system. You can use it, you can videotape yourself in class, videotape all your classes. How did I get started with MOOC making? Actually, by this very simple technique. It helped me to realize how easy a lot of the new material is for learning and doing things online. So I would highly recommend just going and playing a little bit. If you get stuck, ask your daughter to, unstick you, because she'll probably figure it out. You can see it's very straightforward to use. So I think we've covered a lot of the things I wanted to share with you today. I would like to ask if there are any questions about the materials that we've covered.
Hi, my name is Antonio, and I'm from the engineering school here, just around here. And I would like to ask you how your university supports you for this kind of job or for this kind of research, in fact, and also how your peers, other professors, look when you do things like that. If they agree, they think it's interesting, or there is some cemetery-like approach.
When I was first beginning, there was some antagonism to a lot of people would say that anything online is never as good as what you can do it face-to-face. Usually the ones who pronounced this most strongly were the worst teachers, so I was kind of surprised at that. I have just kind of gone on through the years. It is very interesting. In the beginning there was no recognition at all, maybe just a little bit of, oh yeah, and she does this teaching online. I always made sure that my research and everything was in good shape, so they didn't complain too much. But now it's like, oh, wow, we have someone who's a star here. If I had listened to them over the years, I would never have been as successful. And now I'm seen as being a star and very successful professor. So I think if you just persevere through the cemetery, there's sunshine ahead of you, because you'll be ahead of a lot of people. This is the future. In hockey, there's the game hockey where you have the puck on the ice, and they say the best hockey players, they do not skate to where the puck is. They skate to where the puck is going to be. When you are working on these online materials, you are skating to where the puck is going to be in education, so you will be the winner.
Hi, Professor. My name is Juan. I'm a physics undergrad. And my question concerns about what we were talking, for example, putting jokes into the presentations, into the classes. And in my opinion, I want to ask, what about storytelling? So, because to me, some of the greatest things that cause me goosebumps and give me a lot of thought and teach me a lot is, for example, Cosmos from Carl Sagan. And there are episodes when he puts a lot of storytelling and a lot of drama, emotion, and personal experience, telling a concept, a physical concept, or something that happened in history. What do you think? Is it possible to put this into the classes? Do you think it's gets too boring? What are your recommendations?
I think storytelling, great storytelling, is at the heart of great MOOC making. I don't emphasize it as much in my speaking simply because I'm trying to bring people in science, technology, engineering, and math on board, and they get scared when they hear stories, you know, because it's harder to do stories when you're talking about quantum physics and that kind of thing. But particularly if you have a discipline that lends itself to storytelling, oh my word, that's how you grab them. And even if you are teaching in science, technology, engineering, and math, if you have some of those good war stories that you told, and if you can find a way to kind of crystallize them, they will rivet students' attention in a way that other kinds of things, it will stick with them better. So I'm so glad you asked that question, and yes, it is. Storytelling is super important. I hinted at it when I said hook them at the beginning of a video, and then really by hooking them, you're beginning a story, right? And so you're hooking them with a story. One thing that they found is very important if you do not want to bore your students is to raise a question and don't give the answer. But it has to be an interesting question. It can't be just something like, well, and we don't know why this apple falls, but we're going to find out. It has to be something that's really, really, you mean these guys stood up on stage and ate arsenic and they didn't die? That would hook me. So if you have, you can use that as a way of introducing the idea of procrastination, for example, what's going on with your brain with that. A little story that hooks people, it takes some thought sometimes, but it can do a great job in making students take the undigestible, boring stuff more easily because they're waiting to hear the end of the story of what's going to happen.
Hi, this is Thais from Campinas, University of Campinas. I'd like to know how do you manage your course, your learning how to learn in the sense of like replacing videos or in made editions? Does it really need, or once it's ready, it's okay? And also about the forums. You said you have the mentors, but I'd like you to detail a little bit more the interactions with students.
Okay, I haven't really had to replace any of the videos. They were well done. The subject matter isn't changing that quickly that I need to replace videos. Some MOOCs are about subjects that need to be, they're changing pretty quickly, and so you may not want to use some of these more labor-intensive methods just because the subject matter changes so quickly. And now, what was the question really related to mentors? Okay, how do I manage forums and student interaction? The forums run themselves with the help of the mentors. The mentors just kind of look around and they see if there's a problem area. The mentors are so good. They can see when there's something that's troublesome, and they'll come and let me know. But after a course has been running for a while, it runs itself. It doesn't have a lot of things that need to be changed. One thing I did do at the very beginning, though, was a lot of the quiz questions had problems with them. Like, I took a lot of care to create really good quiz questions, but there'd be some weird way that if you were raised in some weird part of the globe, you could look at that question and actually read it and interpret it fairly in a completely different way. So it's so hard to anticipate that kind of thing. So what I did was, when students would complain about poor wording on a question, I'd always fix it right away. Now there's never any complaints because it's been gone through so many times by so many students. But don't be surprised if in the first few months of running a MOOC there are student complaints about the questions, and it's only right to really get on top of it. In fact, I've heard complaints about MOOCs where people would say, the questions were really bad, I corresponded with the instructor, he doesn't care, somebody else created it, and that's, I think, a student is right to rate a MOOC badly if there isn't care being taken about making sure the questions are fair and good. But once you get that handled, it's so easy. Everything just kind of runs itself.
Hello, my name is Adriana. I'm from chemistry here. And I was wondering, because we're focusing so much on online courses. And today was a really good experience. I managed to pay attention in almost everything, and that's something I can't do in my classes. So I was wondering, do you think those approaches, like the funny things, the pictures, those stuffs, can be put in face-to-face class in a way to bring the student more closely to the teacher?
I absolutely think that it is possible to make your classes funnier, more visual, more relevant. And that's what I've done over the years in my engineering classes. So again, I'm not a naturally very funny person. So if you look at my notes will be, tell that joke about, here. A little reminder of a specific joke that I know works at a certain thing. If you read about great comedians, which I do sometimes just for fun, they will carefully refine a joke. They'll play it for an audience. They'll see if it works. Then if it doesn't work, they'll throw it away, or they might kind of tune it up a little bit. So that's what I'm doing in my classes. I'm saying, oh, that explanation, that really worked. And that analogy, they really got that. Oh, they didn't get this analogy. Oh, they got this joke. It was a really good punchline that goes along with this analogy and this difficult topic. So I'm always like upgrading what I'm doing, like a great comedian is upgrading their own material about what they're doing. So it's actually kind of fun to do that.
I'm Carlos. I'm from Lorena. There's a campus, USP Lorena. And I'm very interested in this topic here. And I would say that the professor started talking about the problem here in Brazil, in São Paulo State University, in this university. I guess we have, I have a question and just an overview here. If you look here at this audience, you see a very small amount of teachers or professors of this university and other universities. And this is a big problem for us, I guess. I'm trying to defend the idea to use a kind of hybrid a mixture of presential class, face-to-face, and distance classes, And there is some examples here in Brazil, and people seems not pay attention, at least. In this university we have some. But I guess we have to go through this question here in Brazil. Just a comment, not a question, in fact. Okay, thank you.
I think you bring up a very interesting subject area. We often focus only on the teachers as far as improving students' ability to assimilate the material. In fact, there are teachers that are really interested in doing a great job in teaching are only a part of the full body of professors. That's true. So, but what has been happening for years is this. When we've been focusing on professors, and what happens with that is, look at, we've done the best we can with professors. Right, like right now, we've maxed out on the percentage of professors that are really interested in learning how to teach better. We've got that population. We're working on them. We're doing some great things with MOOCs. But here's where we've not focused. We've not put our focus on students and improving students' abilities to learn better. If we do that, look, we're at this part of the curve. We haven't even begun improving their ability to learn better. If we focus on giving students better tools for learning, then we're going to have a much bigger impact than also, the professors are good, but we're already kind of at the max of what we can do without using new technology like MOOCs. But with students, there's a lot we can do with students. Very good question. Thank you. Or subject area.
Hi, I'm Regina Freitas. I'm an educator and biologist, and you did a deep research about how we learn. And I would like to ask, how do you summarize this content into short videos? Because to me, this is a really hard challenge to summarize this a lot of content into short videos.
So is the question then how I was able to summarize this content in short videos? I can just tell you what works for me. What works for me is it's always best if I write a book about it first. So I've got all this information. I've thought about it. I mean, writing a book is kind of hard. You really have to think about it, and then you have other people coming back and saying, I don't understand what you're talking about. So then you have to rethink it. And so you end up with a very good structure, but it's not short. So then what you can do, you've got your whole book, it's all done, and then you go, what was the key idea of this book? What were their 10 key ideas? Oh, well, let's see, it was focused and diffuse, it was Pomodoro technique, it was chunking, those were my key ideas. Okay, now how do I synthesize all the information of this chapter into one 600-word video? Well, you can do it. In fact, sometimes when you look at it, you go, man, I threw all these extra words in the book that I didn't really need. So usually by creating a good structure for me, writing a book, and then picking out all the key crystals, that's what works for me in creating these short videos that really hit the target with something.
So maybe one more question?
And we have the lucky winner.
Hi, my name is Ramon. I didn't quite get why you said a person shouldn't try to be interesting but practical instead. Like, what is the problem? I didn't understand it.
Okay. If let's say that you had gone to a school of education and said, I want you to create a course on learning how to learn. They would have said, great, I'll do that. We're going to do it for teachers. Wait a minute. Who really wants to learn how to learn? People do. Teachers want it, but people do. Universities, they only think that teachers want to learn how to learn, but people do. So then, then you say, no, I want you to create a course on learning how to learn for regular people. What they would have done is 3 weeks on the history of education, 3 more weeks on theories of education, 3 weeks on how babies learn, and then maybe a couple weeks at the end with a little bit of information about how you can practically learn better, but nothing from, maybe one lecture on neuroscience because it's too hard to communicate. But we flipped all that on the head. We started with neuroscience. We used metaphor and analogy whenever we needed to. Every single lecture is something practically useful. Hey, here's how your mind works. You have these 2 different modes, and that's why you feel frustrated sometimes when you're trying to learn something. You have to step away and let this other mode tackle it. Here's what happens in your brain when you procrastinate. You get a pain in your brain, and here's where that pain occurs. And so here's a practical tool that you can avoid procrastination with. So every single video has a practical takeaway about learning that is all backed by great science. I mean, there's all sorts of research literature. So it's just not wading into theory of this and theory. Theories are great, but they're not. I mean, if a student's trying to learn how to learn, they don't want theories, they want to learn how to learn. And those are the kinds of things that people are often looking for online. Education, I think we have to stay relevant as academics. And part of relevancy means making sure that whatever you give them, that it's not just something out in the weeds, it's some theory. I mean, you can have a theory, but if you can't connect it to something that's real and practical for you, it's just going to be boring, and it's not going to stick with them, and they're not going to want to study that topic. So connect everything you can to something that is practical or real or visual, that relates to their real lives. That's the way to make something that people love to watch.
So we're just about finished, and I'd like to ask your attention just for 5 short minutes to wrap up these last 2 days and to give you a bit of context as to what we're doing and the history of how we got to this point. Most of building MOOCs and working with digital and online learning that's been going on in the last couple of years has been done by the research office at the university. And as you have the idea, the research office doesn't really have anything directly to do with online and digital learning. And it's there mostly due to an accident. And what happened is Coursera, which is our first partner, tried to get in touch with USP for a while, and they couldn't. And eventually, by tortuous ways, it ended up at my lap. I had this the initial version of an agreement, and mostly me and Claudia, mostly Claudia, lift your hand, translated the document, and we went through kind of a really hard job trying to approve and trying to convince the university of its importance. And that even though there was payment for certificates, it was not a threat to public education and a bunch of issues that you imagined that came up. Since then, it kind of started with a partnership then, and it started with us figuring out how to start stuff and how to do it very amateurishly, but it's kind of gained track, gained momentum, and now we're not only thinking about the partnerships that we did for producing scattered content, we're thinking about institutional strategy and how we can put it up and how can we make changes that are important and that are relevant and sustainable. And having you here is already a great indicative that the community is interested in this kind of stuff and is invested in wanting to make these kinds of changes. So this specific event and having the huge honor of having Barb here with us to spend these 2 days talking with us about her experience and how she pioneered a lot of what's being done today in best practices and quality MOOC making, is that we want to be able to, in the near future, have an institutional policy that gives credits to teachers that build these kinds of content, that gives students credit and even free and mandatory credit for attending online classes, making blended learning a possibility in the university. Nowadays it's forbidden. If you actually want to do a blended learning model, the bylaws won't let you. So changes are really necessary, and we're really invested in trying to be a driver. So what I ask you guys from this is that you disseminate this idea the most you can. You convince people locally that they produce content and they come to us so we can help them produce quality content. And at some point next year, hopefully we'll have, we have a lot of studios, but we want to make one really good studio. So it can act as a facility for building MOOCs, and we can assist you in building this kind of stuff. And I'm sorry, I should have thanked Barb before she left the podium, so please stand up so we can thank you and give you very heartfelt round of applause. And we hope to have you back very soon. Obrigadão, gente, por ter vindo e estamos à disposição. Se precisarem conversar no futuro, espero que a gente tenha mais oportunidade de outros eventos como esse também. Obrigadão.